The hall went silent the moment the registrar said, "You may kiss the bride." Marcus lifted the lace veil and pressed his lips to Amara's. Cameras clicked. Drummers outside struck a quick rhythm. A spray of rose petals floated in the air like soft confetti. The gift box fell from Tasha's hands and hit the tiled floor with a hollow clap. He didn't hear it. Or he pretended not to. Tasha stood in the doorway of the Port Harcourt marriage registry, one foot still on the threshold, dust on her sandals from the rush in from the roadside. Her breath came fast. Her eyes stung. The white and gold hall swam. The woman at the front, young, smooth-skinned, with coral beads layered on her neck, held Marcus's hands as if they were the only hands in the world. A murmur rose. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "Is that his wife?" Another voice said, "From Lagos, ABI?" A third voice hushed them both. Marcus finally looked up. His eyes met Tasha's. For a heartbeat, the room froze. The registrar's pen hovered over the certificate. The photographer's flash caught Marcus's face, capturing the split-second flinch before his jaw tightened. Amara drew closer to him, her bold red lipstick steady, her gaze fixed on Tasha with a look Tasha could not read. Was it pity, victory, or fear? Tasha took one step forward, then another. The gift box, calico wrap covering a set of wine glasses, sat crooked by the door. Her hand rose as if she could pull the air back into her chest and turn the moment around. "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking. "What is this?" No one answered. It seemed the whole city paused to listen. The registrar cleared his throat. "Madam, please. This is a solemn." But the word solemn seemed to fall apart in Tasha's ear. How could anything be solemn when the man she had promised to love and fight for, the man who had promised to come home every month, stood in front of a certificate that did not carry her name? A drumbeat outside changed to a faster pace. A child peered in from behind a chair. One of Marcus's colleagues stepped into the aisle, hands raised. "Madam, I beg," he said softly. "Let us handle this after." After. The word sounded like a locked door. 3 months before this moment, Tasha had been sitting at the small dining table in their 2-bedroom apartment in Lagos, pressing a warm towel to the back of Marcus's neck. He had been smiling then, tired from packing boxes for a transfer he did not ask for but had decided to accept. The oil company offered better pay, housing in Port Harcourt, and a promise of promotion after 1 year. They both knew it could change their lives. "Port Harcourt is not far," Tasha said, moving the towel. 6 hours by road. 1 hour by air. We can do it." Marcus looked at her, his eyes soft. "I need you with me, Tasha." Her mother's cough drifted from the bedroom. "I can't leave Mama now," Tasha said. Her therapy just started. "My school resumed already. My girls need me." She taught literature and debate at a public secondary school. Her girls wrote essays about bravery and recited poems during assembly with voices that shook and then steadied. Tasha loved them fiercely. Marcus rubbed his palm over the towel as if he could iron the problem flat. "Then come down every other month. I'll come up monthly. We'll share the road." "Every month," she repeated and said it like a vow. "We will make it work." They had sealed the plan with jollof rice and laughter and a small prayer in the living room. Later that night, they lay close, speaking softly about how distance cannot break what is tied at the heart. Tasha reminded Marcus about their wedding day in Surulere, how they had danced until her feet ached and he had insisted on carrying her upstairs because a queen must not limp into her new home. He had laughed and said he would carry her into every home they ever lived in. He had been the kind of man whose promises sat warm in the mouth. The first month went as planned. Marcus came back on the last Saturday, carrying smoked fish and 2 yards of fine Ankara for Tasha's mother. He mended a door hinge, washed his car by hand, and left on Monday morning before dawn. Tasha walked him down the stairs, barefoot, her scarf tied loosely. He kissed her forehead and said, 30 days. The second month, his visit shrank to 1 night. He had a project deadline and a storm had cut off power at his site. When he left at 5 a.m., he texted mid-flight, "Next month I spend 1 week. Cross my heart." Tasha texted a heart emoji and a prayer. She didn't tell him that her mother's cough had worsened, or that she was now sleeping with one ear open. The third month he asked if Tasha could come instead just this once. She wanted to, but exams at school had started. She promised to come the following weekend. He said okay, and then the line lagged and he said okay again. In Port Harcourt, Marcus lived in a company-owned compound with green gates and a security man who read newspapers in the afternoon shade. The first time Tasha visited, the yard smelled of rain and diesel. A neighbor had waved, a young lady with a soft voice and fast eyes. "Welcome, sir," she said to Marcus. "You're back." "Amara," Marcus said. "Meet my wife." Amara had smiled at Tasha in a way that looked friendly. She wore a simple dress, had a scarf tied high, and carried a tray of puff-puff like an offering to the sky. "I live in the next block," she said to Tasha. "If you need anything, call me. We all help each other here." She left her number on a slip of paper. Tasha folded it once and slipped it in her purse without thinking. Later that evening, Amara sent pepper soup. "For energy after the road," the message read. Marcus laughed and said the compound people were kind. Tasha agreed. After all, kindness keeps cities alive. When Tasha returned to Lagos, she told her mother that the place was good. She meant it. But that night, alone in bed, she thought about the way Amara's eyes had lingered on Marcus's wristwatch and the way she moved closer when she laughed. It was probably nothing, Tasha told herself. People notice watches. Weeks rolled. Tasha pressed work and care into the days until they fit. Her students trained for an inter-school debate. Her mother's doctor adjusted medication. Tasha watched the calendar, drew a small heart around the last Saturday of each month, and kept her hair done because Marcus liked the braid rose neat. The next visit, Marcus didn't come. He called late, his voice dull. "We had a shutdown at the plant," he said. "I can't make it." "It's okay," Tasha said and tried to make it true. "We agreed we would be strong." "Next month," Marcus said, and the phone went quiet after the promise. At school, Ms. Joyce in the next class told Tasha about her cousin, who'd followed her husband to Ilorin the day he got transferred. "We put our roots where the water is," she said. "That's how the tree survives the dry season." Tasha nodded and thought about her mother's medicine schedule, the way the clock on her wall ticked like a living thing, and the girls at school who looked for her eyes during debate practice. She was needed. She had to be wise. She had to be patient. Sundays were the hardest. Church songs made the distance longer. One Sunday afternoon, Tasha called Marcus and Amara answered. "He's at the back fixing the generator," Amara said, breathless as if she had been running. Laughter drifted through the line, men's voices, a TV, a pot bubbling. "Who is this?" "His wife," Tasha said. There was a small silence. "Ah," Amara said. "Let me call him." She didn't. Hours passed before Marcus returned Tasha's call. He sounded tired, grateful, guilty, tender. "It's loud here," he said. "We had people over." "You gave my number to your neighbor," Tasha said gently. "That's fine. I just want you to remember our rules. We agreed to talk every night. No guests after 9. And you come home every month." "Every month," he repeated, like a vow he wanted to keep. But the next month came with a flood that blocked the highway and a contractor who demanded Marcus on site at dawn. Tasha adjusted again. She told herself marriages survive because people give grace. She sent him a photo of herself and her mother in matching head ties. He replied with a thumbs up and a promise to call later. Later slipped into morning. One Thursday, a woman from church sent Tasha a message. "Sis, is your husband in Port Harcourt? My niece says he was at a friend's birthday last night." Small world. The message carried no malice. It carried only the weight of how news travels. Tasha typed, "Yes, he is." She did not ask for photos or details. She did not want to be small. By the time Tasha took the Friday night bus to Port Harcourt, the same Friday that led her to the registry door, the compound had new decorations. Ribbons hung from a veranda. A rented canopy stood near the gate. A DJ tested speakers. The security man nodded at Tasha and glanced at the canopy, his face unreadable. Inside the hall, after Tasha's voice cut the room in two, Amara leaned in and clutched Marcus's arm. "Please," she whispered. "We have to finish." It was the first thing Tasha heard Amara say that day. The second was worse. When Tasha stepped closer, a woman with a geli, one of the aunties, blocked her gently, palm up. "No scene," the auntie said. "Dignity." Tasha's chest burned. "Dignity is not a man abandoning his home," she said, trying to keep her words even. "He promised." Marcus's mother emerged from the crowd then, face stern, wrapper tied tight. "You promised too," she said to Tasha, her voice cold. "You promised to go where your husband goes. A woman protects her marriage with her presence." The words struck like palm fronds on wet skin. Tasha swallowed. "Mama, I begged him to be patient. My mother is sick. My work." "Your work," the older woman repeated, lifting her chin. "Your work. And now his life has moved." The registrar tapped the microphone. "Please," he said, voice firm. "We must conclude." Marcus did not step forward to hold Tasha's hand or lead her outside. He did not ask for 5 minutes. He kept his place beside Amara, whose fingers curled around his. Tasha felt something in her heart shift like furniture moved in the night. "Marcus," she said one last time, "do you choose this?" He faced her fully. It was not anger on his face. It was not even shame. It was the tired look of a man who had made a decision and built walls around it. "Go home, Tasha," he said quietly. "We'll talk later." Amara took a small breath, then turned to Tasha with a voice low enough that only the three of them could hear. "This is not only a wedding," she said. "It is a family." She placed her palm flat on her belly for just a second, quick as a blink. For a moment Tasha did not understand. Then the meaning hit. The room tilted. The registrar lifted the pen again. "Sign here," he told Marcus. The pen touched paper. The door behind Tasha opened wider, letting in a gust of humid air and a rush of voices from the canopy outside. Over the noise, someone shouted her name, the deep voice of a man she hadn't seen in years, a voice that belonged to trouble she thought was buried. "Tasha." Every head turned toward the door. And the pen hovered, a single drop of ink swelling at its tip. The drum outside stumbled as if the drummer's hands forgot the beat. The voice that called Tasha's name cut through the air again, deeper now, closer. He stepped into the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered in a navy suit darkened by Port Harcourt humidity, a scuffed messenger bag slung across his chest. His eyes scanned the hall until they locked on Tasha. It was Darius. Once, long before the transfer and the excuses, Darius had been the kind of friend who bent trouble toward himself and called it protection. He had studied law, worn loud ties and made louder promises. He was the one who warned Tasha about her first fiancé years ago, and he was the reason that fiancé had left town. Marcus never forgave that intrusion. "Your friend does not have a brake," Marcus had said. "He only knows the accelerator." After the wedding, Tasha let distance grow between her and Darius because she wanted her marriage to breathe without outside breath. Seeing him in the registry was like seeing a house from childhood on a road that no longer existed. "Tasha," Darius said again, softer now that he had her attention. "I need to talk to you. Now." The registrar frowned at the interruption and raised his voice. "Please, we must." "Lawyer," Darius said, lifting a hand in a small apology. "Give me 1 minute with the lady whose name, from what I gather, is still on the marriage line." Murmurs rose like wine through tall grass. Marcus's jaw flexed. Amara's eyes narrowed for a blink and then returned to their calm mask. A half-smile flitted over the face of an auntie who loved drama more than rice. Tasha took a small step toward Darius, every muscle braced for a blow she could not see. He slipped his hand into the messenger bag and brought out an envelope sealed with a red stamp, the kind that says a city's machinery had been engaged. "What is it?" she asked, voice low. "Backstory first," he said as if speaking to a client while a clock ticked. "You remember Miss Joyce from your school? She's my cousin. She told me you were in Port Harcourt. She told me your husband stopped coming home. I called a colleague here last week to check a rumor. He found something." He held up the envelope. "Before I hand this to you, you need to know how we got here." He didn't ask permission, there wasn't time. He brought her back, quick, clean like a storyteller picking up a thread, to the days when she and Marcus had first met. It was at a debate finals in Unilag, the hall hot with bodies, the stage brighter than the moon. Marcus had been in the audience, clapping too loudly when Tasha's team slammed down a point on civic responsibility. After the win, he had found her by the staircase and said, "You speak like rain." They had laughed about it for weeks. Rain became their private joke. He would text forecast, and she'd reply, "Heavy, bring umbrella." He was a project engineer then, careful with tools and careless with his heart where she was concerned. They married in Surulere with borrowed chairs and borrowed joy, the kind that friends deposit and never ask to withdraw. They built a small life rich in routine. Saturday market at Ojalegba, Sunday jollof, evening walks past the kiosk where boys argued about English League and the vendor kept the best suya under foil. Her mother moved in when her legs started to slow. Marcus said, "Family is a bundle," and tightened his belt when bills grew teeth. When the transfer came, a white paper with a blue logo, the words Port Harcourt, sitting on the page like a dare. Marcus's shoulders softened with relief at the pay and hardened with fear at the space it would stretch between them. He asked her to come. She said not yet. He looked at her mother's pillbox and nodded like a good son. "We will share the road," he said, and the phrase felt noble until the road began to eat their promise month by month. Loneliness in Port Harcourt did not come like a flood, it came in teaspoons. A late night here, a dead phone there. Marcus filled it with work at first. Morning checks, midday meetings, night repairs. He built a reputation as the man who stayed until the generator stopped complaining. In the compound, the security man waved and said, "Oga, you day try." The neighbor, Amara, walked past with trays and greetings and a gaze that kept returning to Marcus like a bird to a window. She started with kindness. "Do you like plantain?" she asked from the corridor one evening, holding a plate with fried edges crisp in oil. "I made too much." He said thank you and kept his door half closed. She moved to familiarity. "The water here does this," she said, tapping the metal tap cover too hard. "We got a plumber last month. I will send number." He saved the number and told himself it was for the tap. She paused near the car when he washed it on Saturdays, asked about engine noise like sisters of mechanics do, and listened as if his answers were a song. When she learned he had a wife in Lagos, she smiled and said, "A good man keeps his word." When he missed the second month's trip, she brought pepper soup and said, "Road can be cruel. Eat." He said thank you. When she asked if he church hopped or needed a choir, he said he grew up Baptist. She said, "I grew up in nobody's church." He laughed. The laughter was the teaspoon that turned into a cup. Tasha did not see those teaspoons. She saw a calendar with hearts around last Saturdays. She saw her mother's cough get worse and then better and then worse again. At school, she held the chalk like a baton, directing girls to pick their words carefully, to stand taller than fear. At night, she lay in the bed they bought after wedding day and pressed a hand to the cold space where Marcus should be. She prayed for him. She prayed for her patience. She prayed for the transfer to end quickly. She bought a bus ticket to visit. When she entered the Port Harcourt compound that first time, Amara said, "Welcome, sis," and smiled like a well-trained hostess. Only later, on the bus home, did Tasha realize the smile had been too steady. Then came the missed calls. The delayed returns. The Sunday when Amara picked up Marcus's phone and said he was in the back fixing the generator. Tasha told herself to breathe. She told herself marriage is grown in stubborn soil, watered by grace. But grace needs two hands. Darius's voice pulled her back to the hall. "I'm not here to fight," he said, eyes flicking to Marcus and then back to Tasha. "I'm here to keep you from signing a paper you didn't even know existed." He pressed the envelope into her hand. She opened it. A set of photocopied documents slid out, stapled and stamped. Petition for dissolution of marriage, filed in a magistrate court in Rivers State. Attached was a sheet marked Consent of Respondent, bearing her name, her address in Lagos, and a signature that looked like hers but wasn't. Tasha stared at the loop on the T, and the sharp tail of the H, the way the two letters hugged like sisters. The signature was good enough to fool a stranger. It was wrong enough to frighten the woman who owned the hand it tried to imitate. "I didn't sign this," she whispered. "I know," Darius said. "The petition was filed 6 weeks ago. Process server returned it as served by pasting. They claimed you were avoiding service. Last week there was a hearing. You were, of course, absent but represented by counsel with consent filed. The decree Nisi is slated for confirmation next week. He is standing here about to finish what the court has been nudged to begin." He kept his voice low, but the heat in it bled into the air. Whoever pushed this forgot Lagos people know people. Marcus's mother, who had drifted closer with the antennae of an elder who hears the word court from streets away, snatched the top sheet and scanned it. Her eyes flicked to Marcus, then to Tasha, then to Darius. "What is this?" she demanded. Marcus didn't reach for the paper. "You are making a scene," he said to Darius. "This is not your affair." "It became my affair when a clerk tried to enter a decree against my friend with a signature that her own husband knows is not hers," Darius replied. "But please, tell me again how your neighbor who helps with generators also helps with filing fees." Amara's lips thinned. "You will not talk to me like that." "I don't need to talk to you," Darius said. "I need to talk to a registrar who may not want to register a bigamy on a busy Friday." "Enough," the registrar finally snapped, brittle patience broken. "If there is a legal impediment, bring an order. Otherwise, step aside." Around them, whispers swelled. Some took Tasha's side, murmuring that a wife is still a wife until a court says she is not. Others shook their heads and said a woman should guard her home with her presence, not with paper. The auntie with the dramatic eyes fanned herself as if the air had stories in it. Darius leaned toward Tasha. "I can get an injunction," he said quickly. "But it will take hours. If they sign before the court bars it, it becomes more than mess, it becomes a knot. I need you to say something." Tasha's throat felt full of sand. She looked at Marcus, the man who once carried her up the stairs because he didn't want his queen to limp. His face was set like poured concrete. She looked at Amara, whose hand had returned to her belly, a small, practiced gesture that could be truth or theater. She looked at Marcus's mother, whose grief looked like anger because sometimes grief refuses to cry in public. She stepped forward, past the Andy's soft blockade, past the murmur that pressed on her back. She faced the registrar and the table and the open book and the pen that wanted to be history. "Sir," she said, steady at last, "I am the lawful wife. There is a pending petition with a forged consent. I object." The registrar hesitated, caught between bureaucracy and complication. He glanced at Marcus as if hoping the groom would solve his own storm. Marcus's eyes stayed on Tasha, unreadable. Amara's fingers curled tighter. Outside, the drummer found a beat again, this time an uneasy one. Before the registrar could speak, the security man from the compound pushed into the hall, hat in hand, breathless. He looked past Darius, past the aunties, straight at Amara. His voice shook when he spoke, but not from fear. "Madame Amara," he said loud enough for the room to hear. "The man from Baelsa is at the gate. He is asking for you. He says you forgot your baby's things in his car." The hall went completely still. You could almost hear the rustle of the registrar's sleeves as he froze mid-motion. Even the air conditioner seemed to lose its voice. Amara's smile flickered, the smooth curve of her lips twitching as the blood drained from her face. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice rising. The security man scratched his head, clearly wishing he had stayed at the gate. "The man from Baelsa, madam. He's outside with a baby carrier. He said he just dropped you off and forgot the bag with the baby's clothes. He thought you might need it." A loud gasp rippled through the crowd like fire on dry grass. Marcus turned sharply toward Amara. "Baby?" His voice cracked through the air like a whip. "What baby?" Amara took a half-step backward. "Marcus, it's not what you think." "Whose baby?" Marcus shouted, the veins in his neck standing out. "Amara, whose baby?" The registrar quietly set the pen down and stepped back from the table, ready to flee if things exploded. Tasha didn't move. She stood rooted in place, her eyes locked on the man who had just tried to erase her. It was as if the world was balancing on a single, trembling line between revenge and heartbreak. The door swung open again. A tall, light-skinned man in a work shirt entered, carrying a faded blue baby bag in one hand and a small baby wrapped in a yellow shawl in the other. The child whimpered softly, not understanding the tension hanging thick in the air. "Amara," he called out, panting slightly. "You forgot the baby's food flask. You know the doctor said." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the scene before him. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. The registrar looked horrified. The aunties looked delighted. And Marcus looked like a man watching his own house catch fire. The newcomer blinked, clearly confused. Sorry, what's going on here? I thought this was a small family event. Amara told me." "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The man hesitated. "I'm, her husband." The room erupted. Voices overlapped, women shrieked in disbelief, men whispered sharp Yoruba exclamations, "Ha! Iban mi otieo." The drummer outside stopped completely. Tasha's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the man, then at Amara, whose eyes darted wildly between Marcus and the newcomer. "That's not true." Amara screamed suddenly. "He's lying. He's my cousin." The man frowned. "Cousin? Amara, what are you saying? You told me you were going to the registry to renew your business documents. We've been together 2 years. This is our baby." He raised the small bundle slightly, his voice shaking. The child began to cry. The truth burst like thunder. Marcus's mother let out a strangled cry and sat down heavily on a nearby chair. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. Marcus staggered back a few steps, running a hand over his head. "You told me the baby was mine," he said quietly, as though the words hurt to touch. "You told me you were 3 months pregnant, with my child." Amara shook her head violently. "Marcus, I didn't mean for this to happen. You were lonely, I was helping you." "Helping?" Tasha's voice finally rose, sharp and trembling. "You destroyed my home in the name of help?" The baby's cries grew louder, filling the room with piercing innocence. Darius moved swiftly, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Registrar," he said, turning to the official who stood frozen near the desk. "You see now why you cannot proceed with this marriage. There are multiple irregularities, bigamy, falsified consent, and now evidence of an existing marriage. You'll be lucky not to lose your job if you stamp that paper today." The registrar swallowed hard. This is beyond me. I have to stop the ceremony immediately." He closed the book with trembling hands. Marcus turned away from everyone, hands on his head. "I left my wife. I left everything because of you, he said to Amara, his voice hollow. You lied to me, Amara. You lied. I loved you, she shouted, stepping toward him. He was nothing to me. Enough. Marcus roared. Don't say another word. He stormed out of the registry, the heavy wooden door slamming behind him so hard that dust fell from the frame. The man from B.R.T looked around helplessly. Please, I didn't mean to cause problem. Oh. I only came to return what she forgot. Darius took the crying baby from him gently and handed it back. You've done more good than you know, he said quietly. Tasha stood still, her whole body trembling. All the anger she'd been burying for months, every unanswered call, every lonely night, rose like a wave threatening to drown her. But in that moment something else broke through, relief. The truth, however painful, was out. The crowd began to disperse slowly, whispering as they went. Some glanced at Tasha with pity, others with respect. The auntie who had earlier blocked her way nodded approvingly. You see, my daughter, she said softly, God fights for the one whose hands are clean. Tasha didn't answer. She turned to Darius. Thank you, she said, her voice barely audible. He nodded. You don't need to thank me. But you need to get back to Lagos tonight. This place has too many ghosts. Tasha looked toward the door Marcus had gone through. A part of her wanted to run after him, to scream, to cry, to ask why, but another part of her knew it was over. Something had died long before today, she just hadn't buried it yet. She bent to pick up the gift box she had dropped earlier. One of the wine glasses inside had shattered, its glittering pieces catching the light. She stared at it for a long time before whispering, so this is what love looks like when it breaks. Darius touched her shoulder gently. Let's go. They walked out together, the hot afternoon sun pressing down on them. The hum of traffic replaced the shocked silence of the registry. Tasha stopped by the gate and looked up at the sky. It was the same sky she and Marcus once watched from their balcony in Lagos, only now it looked different. Inside the hall, Amara collapsed into a chair, weeping uncontrollably, while the man from B.R.T stood by the door, still clutching the baby. And outside, as Tasha took one last look at the road ahead, her phone vibrated. It was Marcus. She hesitated before answering. Tasha? His voice cracked through the speaker. Please, don't hang up. I need to explain. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath. Explain, she said quietly. Or confess. He sighed heavily. Both. And as the call hung between them, one voice in Port Harcourt, one in the heat of the street, the sound of a crying baby echoed faintly from the hall behind her. It was a sound that would follow Marcus for the rest of his life. Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like, subscribe and share this story with your friends. Also, comment where you're watching from. We love to know where our amazing viewers are tuning in. Tasha stood under the scorching Port Harcourt sun, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her heart thudded in her chest, not out of love but disbelief. The man on the other end of the call was the same one who once promised to come home every month, the same one who swore that no distance could ever weaken their bond. Now, his voice trembled like a man who had finally realized the cost of his own decisions. Marcus, she said softly, trying to steady herself. Why are you calling me now? Haven't you done enough damage? There was silence on the other end, long, heavy, suffocating silence. Then came a deep sigh. Tasha, please. I didn't know she was married. She told me she was single. She told me. You told me you'd call every night, Tasha interrupted, her tone breaking with quiet anger. You told me you'd never let anything come between us. Yet I was the one always waiting, praying, defending you to everyone who said you'd changed. I did change, Marcus admitted. And not for the better. Darius, who had been standing nearby, gave Tasha a nod of concern. You don't have to listen to him now, he whispered. But she shook her head. She needed to hear the rest, every lie, every excuse, every piece of the puzzle that had shattered her home. Marcus, she said again, her voice calm but cold. Talk. I'm listening. He took a deep breath. After I moved here, things were hard. The job was demanding. The nights were long. I missed you, but every time I called, you sounded tired or distracted. You always said you couldn't come because of your mother or your students, and I understood at first. But loneliness, he paused, swallowing hard, loneliness does something to a man. It makes you see shadows as company. Tasha let out a sharp laugh that wasn't laughter at all. So, you let a stranger into our marriage because of loneliness? She wasn't a stranger, he said quietly. She lived next door. She was kind, always checking in, bringing food. I thought she cared. And when she told me she was carrying my child, his voice broke. I believed her. I didn't even ask for proof. I just wanted something to fill the silence you left behind. Tasha's throat tightened. The silence I left? Marcus, I begged you to be patient. I stayed behind because my mother was dying. Because our life depended on my job. You called it love when I held everything together while you were gone. But now you're blaming me for your betrayal? I'm not blaming you, he whispered. I'm blaming myself. She looked up at the blazing sun. Her shadow stretched long on the pavement, just as her pain had stretched over months of waiting. Do you remember what you said before you left Lagos? She asked quietly. You said distance means nothing when hearts are loyal. You said love isn't about being in the same place, it's about being on the same side. I remember, Marcus said, his voice shaking. And I failed that side. Tasha's fingers trembled as she clutched the phone. Yes, you did. You failed us. You failed the vows we made. You failed the home I tried to protect. He was silent again. Then after a long pause he said, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to see you, one last time. Please. Tasha turned to Darius, who had been quietly pretending not to listen. He wants to see me, she said softly. Darius frowned. You owe him nothing. But if it will give you closure, do it on your terms, not his. Tasha nodded. Marcus, she said into the phone. Where are you? At the waterfront, he replied. The same spot we visited the last time you came. Please just come once more. I need to tell you everything face to face. Something in his voice made her pause, not love, not guilt, but desperation. Against her better judgment she said, I'll come. But this time, Marcus, you'll do the listening. The taxi ride to the waterfront felt longer than the 6-hour road trip between Lagos and Port Harcourt. Every sight blurred into memory, the market stalls, the flickering signboards, the scent of roasted corn. The city itself seemed to mock her, whispering stories of women who trusted too deeply and men who lost their way chasing shadows. When she arrived, Marcus was already there. He stood by the water, his once perfect white shirt now wrinkled and soaked with sweat. The breeze lifted his collar, and his eyes, those same eyes that once carried love and laughter, were now hollow, tired, and lost. Tasha, he began, stepping forward. She held up a hand. Don't come closer. Just talk. He stopped, swallowing hard. I've been a fool. I built a house of lies, thinking it was comfort. When I found out she was married, I thought I was dreaming. I confronted her, and she laughed. She said she wanted what you had, respect, a good man, a real home. And I gave her everything I had left of myself, trying to prove I wasn't alone. Tasha shook her head slowly. You were never alone, Marcus. I was there even when you stopped calling. I was there every night, praying for you. The only thing you were missing was contentment. He nodded miserably. I know. I see that now. The breeze rustled the water's surface, carrying the sound of boat horns from far away. Tasha crossed her arms, looking out at the water instead of at him. So what happens now? He hesitated. I want to fix things. If you'll let me. She turned sharply. Fix things? Her laugh was bitter. You forged my name to end our marriage. You planned a wedding with another woman. You left me humiliated in front of strangers, and you want to fix things? I didn't forge your name, Marcus said quickly. Her lawyer did. I didn't even know until I saw the papers filed. She handled everything, said she'd help me speed up the process. I didn't realize she had already. Enough, Tasha cut in. Whether she did it or not, you allowed it to happen. Her words hung heavy in the humid air. Marcus looked at her helplessly, as though searching for the woman who used to smile at him across dinner tables. But that woman was gone, buried under betrayal and months of unspoken pain. Do you still love me, Tasha? He asked suddenly. His voice cracked, raw and unguarded. She hesitated. It was the question she had been afraid of, the one that had haunted every sleepless night. Did she still love him? Maybe a part of her did. But love, she realized, wasn't enough anymore. I love the man you used to be, she said softly. Not the one who stood in that registry today. Marcus's face fell. So this is goodbye? Tasha nodded. It has to be. She turned to leave, her footsteps slow but certain. Marcus called after her one last time. Tasha. She stopped but didn't turn. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back the trust one lost, he said. Even if you never forgive me. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked away, the setting sun casting long shadows across the waterfront. The same sun that had once watched their love bloom now watched it die quietly. That night, Tasha sat in her small hotel room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't broken, she was wiser, sharper, and quieter. Pain had become her teacher. She picked up her phone and opened her message drafts. There were dozens of unsent texts to Marcus. Angry ones, hopeful ones, pleading ones. She deleted them all. Then she sent one final message. You were right, Marcus. Distance doesn't destroy love. Ego does. She powered off her phone and placed it beside her Bible. The next morning she packed her bags and took the first bus back to Lagos. As the vehicle rumbled out of Port Harcourt, she looked out the window and whispered to herself, I won't make that mistake again. What she didn't know was that Marcus would spend the following months trying to find her, until life itself decided to test them both again in ways neither of them saw coming. The twist that awaited her back in Lagos would shake her far more than Marcus's betrayal ever did. Share your honest thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can enjoy it. The road to Lagos stretched endlessly, each mile heavy with memories. The bus engine hummed a low, mournful tune as Tasha stared out the window, her head resting against the cold glass. Raindrops streaked down the pane, merging into thin lines like tears she no longer had the strength to cry. Around her, passengers whispered, dozed, or chewed on roasted corn. But Tasha heard only the echo of Marcus's voice, that trembling, "Do you still love me?" that had burrowed into her chest and refused to leave. For 7 years, Marcus had been her world. Now, he was just a chapter she couldn't reread without pain. The bus hit a bump, jerking her awake. Outside, the signs for Lagos were already in view: Ojota, Surulere, the life she had put on hold for a marriage that had crumbled in another city. When the bus stopped, Tasha stepped into the soft drizzle, clutching her small travel bag. Lagos smelled of wet dust and burnt fuel, familiar, loud, alive. She hailed a tricycle and gave the driver her address. By the time she reached her compound, the streetlights had come on. The small 2-story building stood just as she left it, except the flower pots she used to water every morning were dry, and her mother's window was dark. She fumbled with the keys, opened the door, and whispered into the silence, "Mama, I'm home." No answer. Her chest tightened. She set the bag down and hurried into the bedroom. There, lying under a thick wrapper, was her mother, still, pale, peaceful. For one wild moment, Tasha thought she was asleep. Then she noticed the folded note on the bedside table, written in her mother's slow, careful handwriting. "My daughter, if you are reading this, it means my body has rested. Do not cry too long. I saw the pain in your eyes before you left, but I also saw the strength you were too humble to recognize. Love is a good thing, but it must never blind you. Forgive, but don't return to chains. Remember, after every storm the sky still belongs to the sun. Mama." The paper trembled in Tasha's hand as she sank to her knees. All the strength she had carried crumbled. The sobs came heavy and raw, echoing through the empty room. When the neighbors heard, they rushed in, Mama Risi, the landlord's wife, and 2 church women. They surrounded her, wailing softly, murmuring words of comfort she barely heard. By morning, the small compound was filled with visitors. Women swept, cooked, prayed, and comforted her. A few men from church helped make arrangements. Through it all, Tasha moved like a ghost, quiet, numb, mechanical. She signed papers, took calls, nodded when spoken to, but her mind was somewhere between grief and disbelief. 2 days later, Darius arrived from Port Harcourt. He walked into the sitting room, his shirt slightly damp from rain, and hugged her tightly. "I came as soon as I heard," he said softly. Tasha nodded. "She waited for me. I just wasn't here in time." Darius sighed deeply. "She knew you'd come back stronger. She always believed that." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain tap against the roof. Finally, Darius cleared his throat. "Marcus called me this morning." Tasha's body stiffened. "What does he want now?" "He said he's sorry. He's been suspended from his job. Apparently, the company launched an internal investigation after someone reported the forged documents. He's lost his house too." "Good," Tasha said quietly. "Now he knows what loss feels like." Darius looked at her carefully. "You don't sound angry anymore." "I'm not," she said. "Just tired." He nodded slowly. "Maybe tired is the beginning of healing." That night, after everyone left, Tasha sat on the balcony, watching the distant streetlights blur through her tears. She thought about her mother's letter. "Forgive, but don't return to chains." The next morning she called Marcus. He answered immediately, his voice weary but hopeful. "Tasha? Thank God. I didn't think you'd ever speak to me again." "Marcus," she said flatly, "I'm not calling to talk about us. I just want you to know Mama passed away. He went silent for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. Oh God. Tasha, I'm so sorry. She was a good woman. Please, let me come and pay my respects. No, she said firmly. You've done enough. Just pray from wherever you are. Tasha, please. I need to see you. I need to make things right. You can't make this right, she said, her tone calm but final. There's nothing left to fix. He began to cry quietly. I don't deserve forgiveness, but please don't hang up on me. Tasha didn't. She listened, not out of love but closure. When he was done, she said softly, I forgive you, Marcus. But forgiveness isn't an invitation. It's release. You're free, and so am I. Then she ended the call. For the first time in months, she slept without dreams. Weeks passed. The funeral came and went. Life moved on as life always does. Tasha returned to her teaching job, pouring her energy into her students. She started mentoring the girls' debate team again, finding comfort in their laughter. She even began attending church regularly. Darius, ever the quiet protector, stopped by often to check on her. Sometimes they talked about old times. Other days they just sat in silence, sipping tea. One Saturday evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Darius finally said, You know, Tasha, you have a gift for strength. But you don't have to carry everything alone. She smiled faintly. You sound like Mama. He chuckled. Then she must have been a wise woman. Tasha looked at him, her eyes softening. She was. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt different, gentler, easier. But just as she was about to thank him for all he'd done, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She frowned, answered cautiously, and froze as soon as she heard the voice on the other end. Good evening, Mrs. Marcus, the woman said politely. This is Nurse Folake from St. Jude Hospital in Port Harcourt. Your husband, Mr. Marcus Okafor, was brought in after a serious accident on the expressway. He's asking for you. The world seemed to tilt again. Tasha gripped the edge of the chair, her heart racing. Is he alive? Yes, ma'am, the nurse replied gently. But he's not doing very well. He said he needed to see you urgently. Please, can you come? Tasha stared into the distance, her mind spinning. The man she had finally forgiven but sworn never to see again was lying in a hospital bed, calling her name. Darius watched her expression shift from calm to fear. What's wrong? He asked. Tasha turned to him slowly. It's Marcus, she whispered. He's in the hospital. He hesitated. Do you want to go? She looked down at her trembling hands, then at the small cross hanging from her mother's necklace. After a long silence, she whispered, I don't know, but maybe God wants me to. And as the night closed in around them, one thing was certain. Tasha's journey with Marcus was not over yet. Not until she faced the man who had broken her heart, one last time. The morning after the call was slow and gray, the kind of morning where even the sun hesitated to rise. Tasha sat by the window, staring at her packed travel bag. She hadn't slept all night. Every memory, every betrayal, every apology, looped through her mind like an old film she couldn't switch off. Marcus's voice from the night before echoed in her head, Please, I need to see you. She thought of ignoring the nurse's call. She thought of deleting the hospital's number. But her mother's words, written in that final letter, whispered in her heart. Forgive but don't return to chains. Forgiveness didn't mean silence. It meant facing the wound and choosing not to let it rot. By noon she made her decision. She would go. Are you sure about this? Darius asked gently as he helped her load her small suitcase into his car. Tasha nodded. I don't know if I'm ready to see him, but I need to end this properly. Not for him, for me. The drive to Port Harcourt felt different this time. It wasn't love pulling her forward, it was closure. Darius drove quietly, glancing at her from time to time. You don't have to say anything to him, he said softly. You've already done more than most people would. I'll know what to say when I see him, Tasha replied, her voice steady but her eyes distant. The closer they got to the city, the heavier her chest became. When they finally pulled into the St. Jude Hospital compound, Tasha's fingers trembled. She whispered a short prayer under her breath before stepping out of the car. Inside, the smell of antiseptic filled the air. Nurses hurried along the hallway. The distant beep of a heart monitor echoed faintly. A nurse led her to the private ward. He's been awake since morning, the woman said softly. He's very weak, but when he heard you were coming, he smiled for the first time. Tasha paused outside the door, her hand hovering over the handle. She took a deep breath and pushed it open. Marcus lay on the bed, a neck brace holding him still, one arm bandaged, his face bruised. But when he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "Tasha," he whispered. For a moment she couldn't speak. The sight of him, broken, fragile, stripped away all the anger she'd built like armor. He wasn't the proud, confident man who had walked out of their marriage. He was just a man, weak, wounded, and deeply human. She took a small step closer but stopped at the foot of the bed. "Marcus." His lips quivered. "You came." "I did," she said quietly. "Not because you deserve it but because I needed peace." He tried to smile. "You've always had more strength than me." She looked around the room, flowers on the table, for drip by the bed, a photo of them from years ago lying face down on the chair. "What happened?" she asked softly. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, ashamed. "I was on my way to see you. I wanted to apologize in person. I wanted to beg. But on the expressway a truck lost control and—" He stopped, coughing weakly. "Don't strain yourself," Tasha said, moving closer. He shook his head slightly. "No, you need to hear this. After everything that happened with Amara, I lost everything. The company suspended me. My friends disappeared. My family turned their backs. I was alone. Then last week I heard your mother died, and I realized I'd broken more than vows. I'd broken a woman who truly loved me." Tasha's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "You didn't just break me, Marcus. You broke yourself too." He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his bruised cheek. "You're right. And I deserve all of it." Silence stretched between them. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Then Marcus whispered, "Tasha, I'm dying." Her head snapped up. "Don't say that." "I mean it," he said weakly. "The doctor said the internal bleeding caused serious damage. They can manage it for now, but there's no guarantee I'll last long. I've been thinking about everything I've done. The lies. The betrayal. The distance. I don't want to leave this world without your forgiveness." Tasha's hands shook. "Marcus, don't talk like that." He reached out a trembling hand. "Please, just tell me you've forgiven me. Even if you'll never love me again. I need to die knowing I'm not hated." Tasha looked at him for a long time, her throat tightening. She thought of the years they spent together, of his laughter, his warmth, his betrayal, and her mother's final words. Finally, she took his hand gently and said, "Marcus, I forgave you long before you asked. Not for you but for my own peace. I couldn't move on until I let go of the pain." A weak smile spread across his face. "Then I can rest now," he whispered. "Don't you dare talk about resting," she said, forcing a small laugh through her tears. "You'll live, Marcus. You'll heal." He smiled faintly, his eyelids fluttering. "You still sound like the woman I fell in love with." Tasha brushed away her tears. "No, Marcus. You fell in love with a version of me that needed your validation. The woman standing here doesn't." For a moment, silence filled the room, then Marcus laughed weakly, a sound somewhere between sorrow and peace. "Maybe that's what love should have taught me, to cherish strength instead of control." He exhaled slowly, closing his eyes as if in prayer. The door creaked open and Darius stepped in quietly, carrying a small pack of fruits. When he saw Marcus's fragile state, he nodded respectfully. "I'll wait outside," he said softly. But Marcus lifted a trembling hand. "No, please stay. You're the man who stood by her when I failed. You deserve to hear this too." Darius hesitated, then nodded. Marcus looked at both of them. "Promise me something. Don't waste time hating. Life is too short. I learned that the hardest way." Tasha squeezed his hand gently. "Rest, Marcus. Don't talk anymore." But Marcus's eyes were distant now, as though he was already halfway between worlds. He smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. "You'll be fine, Tasha. You always were." Then the heart monitor gave a sharp, flat tone. Tasha froze. "Marcus." Nurses rushed in, shouting orders. Darius pulled Tasha back as they began chest compressions. "Ma'am, please step outside," one of them said. Tasha stumbled into the hallway, tears blurring her vision. She pressed her back against the wall, hands shaking uncontrollably. Minutes later, the doctor emerged, removing his gloves with a slow shake of the head. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "He didn't make it." The world around her went silent. The hospital walls seemed to spin. She sank slowly to the floor, her face buried in her hands. Darius knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her as she wept. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's over now. You did what you needed to do." Through her tears, Tasha managed to whisper, "No, it's not over. I just lost the man I used to love twice, once to betrayal and now to death." And as her sobs filled the hallway, Rain began to fall outside, soft, unhurried, and cleansing, like the heavens themselves were trying to wash away the pain that had stained her soul for too long. The morning after Marcus's death, Port Harcourt felt eerily quiet. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Tasha sat on the edge of the hospital bed, staring at the empty space where his body had been just hours ago. The faint indentation on the sheets still carried his shape, but the warmth was gone. She wasn't crying anymore. She had no tears left to give. All that remained was a strange mix of sadness and peace. Sadness for the man Marcus could have been, peace because she had finally spoken her forgiveness before it was too late. A soft knock came at the door. It was Darius. He entered quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. "You haven't eaten since yesterday," he said gently, setting one beside her. "I'm not hungry," she murmured. He sat opposite her, watching her face. "You know, you did something most people wouldn't. You showed up when he needed you, even after everything." Tasha looked up slowly. "I didn't do it for him, Darius. I did it for me. For my own soul." He nodded. "That's exactly what forgiveness is." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the rain outside filling the room. After a few minutes, Darius spoke again. "The hospital wants to release the body. They'll need someone to sign the papers." Tasha took a deep breath and stood. "I'll do it. He may not have been the husband he promised to be, but he's still the man I once loved. I'll handle it." Together, they walked down the corridor to the administrative office. The nurse who had called her the night before met them halfway. "Madam, I'm so sorry for your loss," she said softly. "He kept saying your name until the very end." Tasha forced a small smile. "Thank you." When she signed the release papers, her hand trembled slightly. The ink smudged as her tears dropped onto the page. It was the final signature that tied up 7 years of marriage. Not divorce papers, not love letters, but the acknowledgement of death. 2 days later, Marcus was laid to rest in his hometown in Imo State. Tasha had wanted to keep things simple, but his family insisted on a proper burial. The ceremony was quiet. Few people attended, mostly extended relatives and a handful of his former colleagues. The compound smelled of wet sand and burning incense. The choir from his old church sang softly, their voices trembling like the wind through dry leaves. Marcus's mother, who had once blamed Tasha for everything, was a different woman now. Her eyes were swollen from crying. When she saw Tasha arrive, she hurried forward, her wrapper sweeping across the wet grass. "My daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't even know how to face you. I was wrong. I said terrible things. I didn't see the truth until it was too late." Tasha took her hands gently. "Mama, it's okay. You don't have to explain. I forgave you too." The older woman sobbed quietly, holding Tasha close. "He spoke of you in his last letter," she whispered. "He said you saved his soul before he left this world." Tasha blinked back tears. "I just gave him peace. The rest was between him and God." After the burial, as the crowd dispersed, Tasha stayed behind at the graveside. The red soil looked soft and fresh, the tombstone still damp. She knelt and whispered, "You made mistakes, Marcus, but I believe you found peace. I hope wherever you are, you're free now." The breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain and hibiscus. She took a small flower from the ground and placed it gently on the grave. When she stood, Darius was waiting by the car. He didn't speak. He simply handed her a handkerchief and opened the door. As they drove back toward Lagos, Tasha leaned against the window, the world outside blurring past like the end of a long, painful movie. Back in Lagos, life didn't immediately return to normal. It never does after loss. But slowly, piece by piece, Tasha began to rebuild. She threw herself into teaching, mentoring girls who reminded her of the woman she used to be, hopeful, trusting, full of dreams. She started volunteering at a women's support group, sharing her story to help others find strength through pain. One evening, after a long day at school, she found Darius waiting outside the gate, leaning against his car. "You're becoming impossible to catch," he said with a grin. "You're always busy helping others." Tasha smiled. "It keeps me going." He nodded. "I can see that. You're glowing again, you know. Not the kind of glow you had when you were married. This one's different. It's peace." She laughed softly. "Maybe it's freedom." They stood there for a while, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. The quiet between them was easy, not heavy like it used to be. Then Darius said, "You ever think about starting over?" She turned to him, curious. "Starting over how?" He shrugged, smiling faintly. "I don't know. A new chapter. Maybe not love right away, but something that feels like sunlight after rain." Tasha looked at him, really looked at him. For years, Darius had been the voice of reason, the calm in her storm, the friend who showed up when everyone else disappeared. She smiled. Maybe I'll let life decide. For now, I'm just learning to breathe again. He nodded. That's enough. One breath at a time. That night, Tasha lay in bed and opened her mother's letter once more. She read the final line out loud, her voice soft but sure. After every storm, the sky still belongs to the sun. She smiled faintly and whispered, and maybe this time I'll be the sun. The wind outside carried the faint sound of children laughing somewhere down the street. Life, it seemed, had started moving again, and so had Tasha. But as she drifted off to sleep, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Good evening, madam. This is Dr. Nkem from St. Jude Hospital. We found a sealed envelope in Mr. Marcus Okafor's belongings, addressed to you. Please, when you can, come and collect it. It seems personal. Tasha stared at the message, her heart skipping. What could Marcus possibly have left behind? She turned off the light and whispered into the darkness. One more secret, Marcus? One more? And as the night deepened, she knew that whatever was in that letter, it might change everything she thought she knew about the man she'd buried. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story is touching your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so more people can join this emotional journey. The next morning, Lagos was painted in soft gold. The sun peeked through her window blinds, but Tasha didn't move. She lay still, staring at her phone on the bedside table, the message from the hospital glowing faintly on the screen. We found a sealed envelope in Mr. Marcus Okafor's belongings, addressed to you. She hadn't slept all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face in that hospital bed, broken yet peaceful, and now the thought of his final letter gnawed at her. By noon, she made her decision. She needed to see what was inside. She dressed simply, a white blouse and a long Ankara skirt, her hair tied back in a bun. Before leaving, she looked in the mirror and said quietly, "Whatever is in that letter, it won't break me." Darius insisted on driving her. He didn't ask too many questions, he just said, "I'll wait in the car." When they arrived at St. Jude Hospital, everything felt heavier. The nurse from before recognized her immediately. "Ah, madam, we've been expecting you," she said, handing her a brown envelope sealed with black wax. Marcus's handwriting was unmistakable, neat, deliberate, familiar. On the front, in blue ink, were just 4 words. For Tasha. My truth. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed the acknowledgement form. Then she walked out to the garden behind the hospital, a quiet place where she could read without interruption. She sat on a wooden bench, took a deep breath, and broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter and a folded photograph. She unfolded the letter slowly. My dearest Tasha, if you are reading this, it means I didn't make it. I asked them to give you this because there are things I never said, things you deserve to know before you let my memory go completely. First, I'm sorry. I know sorry feels small compared to the pain I caused, but it's all I have left to offer. Every night after you left, I thought about the day I lost you, and I realized something. I didn't lose you to another man or to distance. I lost you the moment I stopped respecting the love we built. When I met Amara, I was lonely, yes, but that wasn't the real reason I fell. The truth is, I wanted to feel powerful again. The distance between us made me feel forgotten, and when she came with her laughter and her attention, I mistook it for love. But Tasha, I swear on everything I am, I never stopped loving you. Even in my foolishness, I missed you every day. The forged divorce papers weren't my doing. Her lawyer handled everything. I signed documents without reading them properly. By the time I realized, it was too late. I was trapped in a lie, and pride wouldn't let me crawl back to you. There's something else I never told you. 2 months after you left Port Harcourt the first time, Amara came to me crying. She said she was pregnant. I believed her. But what I didn't know was that she'd lost the baby weeks before and faked her pregnancy to keep me. That child everyone thought was mine, it wasn't. The man from Bielsa, the one who came that day at the registry, he was the father. I only found out a week before my accident. I confronted her and she laughed. She said, "Now you know how it feels to be deceived." I wanted to tell you everything. That's why I was driving that night. I was on my way to Lagos. Maybe it was fate that stopped me halfway. Maybe it was punishment. But if I'd made it, I would have fallen at your feet and begged for forgiveness. There's one last thing, Tasha. I left a small life insurance policy in your name. It's not much, but I wanted to make sure you never struggled because of me. The documents are with my lawyer, Mr. Adewale, in Port Harcourt. I don't deserve your mercy, but I hope you'll find it in your heart to pray for me once in a while. You were my greatest blessing even when I was too blind to see it. Forever sorry, Marcus. Tasha's hands shook as she lowered the letter. For a long time she said nothing. The photograph fluttered to her lap. It was one of them, taken years ago in Surulere. Marcus had his arm around her, and she was laughing at something he'd whispered. They both looked so young, so sure, so unaware of how fragile love could be. Tears slid down her cheeks, not angry tears, not bitter ones, just soft, cleansing drops. The truth had hurt, but it had also healed something deep inside her. She folded the letter carefully, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "I forgive you again, Marcus." This time, completely. When she stood, Darius was waiting near the garden gate. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Yes. For the first time I think I am." He tilted his head. "What did the letter say?" She smiled faintly. "It said goodbye." Months passed. Life began to bloom again around Tasha. Her school honored her with a Teacher of the Year award for her work with young girls. She started a mentorship foundation for women recovering from broken homes and heartbreak, teaching them to find strength through forgiveness. Her story spread. Local newspapers wrote about the teacher who turned pain into purpose. Through it all, Darius stayed by her side. Never pushing, never demanding, just present. One bright Saturday afternoon, they sat in her compound sipping Zobo and listening to children play. The laughter of the children filled the air, light and unburdened. Darius turned to her and said, "You know, I think Marcus would be proud of the woman you've become." Tasha smiled. "Maybe. But I'm not who I am because of what he did. I'm who I am because I chose not to let it destroy me." He nodded thoughtfully. "And what now? What does Tasha want next?" She looked at him, the corners of her mouth lifting. "Peace. Growth. And maybe one day, love that doesn't need fixing." He smiled. "Then that's exactly what you'll have." The wind carried the scent of blooming hibiscus, the same kind she'd placed on Marcus's grave. For the first time in years, Tasha didn't feel haunted. She felt free. As the evening sun painted the sky orange, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Mama was right. After every storm, the sky still belongs to the sun." Darius looked at her, his smile warm and sure. "And you, Tasha, you are the sun." The camera of life panned slowly upward. Over the small compound, over the noisy Lego street, over the woman who had lost everything yet found herself again. And in that fading golden light, her story came full circle, not of pain but of healing. What lesson did you take from Tasha and Marcus's story? Do you believe every relationship deserves forgiveness, even after betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share this story with others who believe in healing, second chances, and strength after heartbreak.